Good morning, everybody. Welcome and thank you for joining us this morning at the Building Financially Sustainable Ministry online webinar. We're really pleased that you can be with us, so thank you so much. My name is James Vaughton, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer at Transform Europe Network. It's good to be with you. Some of you will know TEN, and some of you won't. But TEN is committed to working with Christian leaders across Eastern Europe and the Balkans as they grow the kingdom of God. We're committed to standing with our partners through their compassion, evangelism, and church planting ministries. And we're really pleased with you that you are with us for the next couple of hours. So if you're one of the good numbers who've joined us this morning, we give you a big welcome. If we know you, if you're one of TEN's partners, you're really welcome. But also, if you're somebody we don't know at TEN, you are really welcome too. We know we have friends from European Christian Mission and Youth for Christ joining us, and perhaps other organizations too. So a big welcome to you. I want to extend a big formal welcome to all of our speakers today. I'll introduce each of them individually as they come to speak, but just to start by saying, I'm really grateful that they're here, and having heard some of their stories over the last couple of years, but also recently, I know you'll be encouraged and inspired to do something new, perhaps, as you leave this webinar. Just to start, a little bit of housekeeping. This is being recorded, so you will be able to share it with others who you think may benefit. We've had a few people ask us to share the recording once the event is over. You also have access to the Q&A function. Ken Millwood, our partners officer, will be running that. If you have technical questions, by all means use it. Others may have the same one. Ken will do his best to reply. However, the primary purpose of it is so that you can ask questions of the speakers. And we will have two opportunities for that at the end of the first half, after the first three speakers have spoken. And at the end of the event, we'll also have another opportunity. If you see that somebody else has asked a question that you would like to ask, simply click the thumbs up sign in the Q&A, the Q&A section of Zoom. You will need to make the selection to see all questions. Otherwise, by default, you'll only see the questions that you have. Some of our speakers will be using PowerPoint slides, and if you want to see the face of the speaker, not just the slide, you can adjust the size of the slide by using the toggle in the middle. And just to say, we will also send out PowerPoint slides after the event. So why are we doing this? Well, let me ask you, I wonder what keeps you awake at night? I would like to say to you that what keeps me awake at night is a concern for people in our world, and that would be true to some extent, a burden to share the gospel, because I see that as hugely, hugely important. But also, to be honest, one of the things that keeps me awake at night is the challenge of raising funds for an organization, is the fact that projects and people's living depends on the work I do. And I know for many of you, that may also be something of your experience. And yet, as a Christian, I believe that we serve the God who owns the cattle on 1,000 hills, as the psalmist writes in Psalm 50. So in other words, God has all the resources that we need. However, that doesn't mean it just happens. God is a God who invites our involvement and our participation. And it's with that in mind that we're holding this web conference today, to play our part as TEN, as you build what God is doing in the communities, the countries that you serve in. As I've spoken to our partners, I believe that God has over a number of years brought to our attention the need that we have to do more to encourage this idea of building local financial sustainability. And we've already begun to do that, and I'm encouraged by some of the projects we've seen among our partners, things like vans that we've helped support to be bought for a removals business. See businesses start in local churches, see polytunnels bought for projects in Romania. And we would love to encourage more Christian leaders in the Balkans and Eastern Europe to do this too, to see that actually business and mission can come together and be something that God can use to impact the lives of people in your communities. So I'm really excited today to hear from our speakers. Some of their stories I've already heard, some I'm looking forward to hearing, but each one has a great story. And so I hope and pray it will impact you where you are and in your particular circumstances. So without any further words from me, I am going to be handing over to our first speaker, Sebastian Vaduva. And Sebastian has been involved in about 20 startups. He's held corporate training for all sorts of executives and IT firms across Romania. He's currently the Dean and Director of the Griffith Schools of Management in Oradea, Romania. And I'm really excited that Sebastian's with us. I had a great time meeting with him earlier in the year. Sebastian, over to you.
Well, thank you very much, James. Good afternoon. Hello to everybody. Some of you are missing your lunch, so I'm hoping that you get to munch something on the side. It's really exciting to be able to talk about this subject, which is not always an easy subject to talk about. So since I am the first one who will sort of set up the stage for everybody, I'll be using a PowerPoint. It's easier to follow along, but also those of you who would like this, please contact James and the staff over at 10, and they will make this PowerPoint available to you. The title of my presentation is Building Financial Sustainable Ministry, or Biblical Principles for Financial Sustainability. So the agenda, I have about 20 minutes that I'll be speaking to, and there's really 3 questions that I'd like to answer. For the first couple of minutes or so, I'd like to go back into the history and understand a little bit of how the NGO sector in Eastern Europe was formed. Now, I understand that everybody had a different experience, and some of the things that I may mention here may not be applicable to you. But I think it behooves us to go back and understand a little bit where we're coming from. The second question is, what changed after 2008? And I think every nation and every ministry sort of has a different date. I just pick up 2008 because that's when we had the financial crisis, and then also some of us were integrated into the European Union. And even though we didn't know it at that time, it was truly a turning point, almost like 1989, but not quite. So I'm going to spend a couple of minutes talking about that. And then finally, where I will spend the bulk of my presentation is talk about biblical principles for building a financial sustainable ministry. Now, again, I don't mean to sit before you as the world's greatest expert. I see myself more of a student than anything else. I'm still learning. So as I am consulting with companies, as I am talking to people, this is work in progress. Also, given the limitation of time, I will certainly not be mentioning every single scripture verse that should be mentioned here. I will be looking at the example of Paul the Apostle, which I think was by far the greatest missionary, and God just used him mightily to both write the scripture, but at the same time to spread Christianity. And if anybody wants to have a discussion on that, I'll be really, really happy about that. So there's 4 issues that I think can be mentioned about the genesis of the Eastern European sector. Number 1, we had a terrible communist legacy, terrible government failure. And I personally actually became saved by watching a documentary about the plight of the Romanian orphans in the state orphanages of Romania. So my story is, my family emigrated to the United States in 1989 before the revolution. Had no idea, kind of like what I left behind. But God used a documentary about the failures of communism to really touch my heart and plant that seed and say, you know, someday I may need you to go back to your native country. And that's what happened in 2004. The second issue was a lot of Western goodwill and awareness. As a marketing person, I call that free publicity. The situation of Eastern Europe was on CNN, was on BBC, was everywhere. We did not need to make people aware of what was going on here. Number 3, we may not realize this, but in Eastern Europe, we had a very, very low cost structure. If I were to ask you how much it cost to build some of the things that were built in the 90s, they were very, very small prices. I remember when I came to Emmanuel University, our monthly budget was $15,000 a month, which for a university with 500 students and lots of professors was nothing. But this was the late 90s. This is the time when, inflation was rampant, so on and so forth. The fourth issue was a lot of local enthusiasm, a lot of volunteerism. People were excited. People were enthusiastic. Everybody was motivated by what we can do. So everybody lived on the things that we couldn't do in terms of churches, in terms of ministry, in terms of schools, in terms of orphanages. And now all of a sudden the pendulum swung in the other direction. Here's the things that we can do. So people were very excited. People were very enthusiastic. So what had changed? And again, I don't want to be critical or anything like that. But I noticed four major transformations since 2008. Number one, the government has really cleaned up its act. So when you look at a lot of the governmental services that were not provided back then are being provided now, especially a country like Romania, Bulgaria, to a certain degree, even Moldova, who are also being integrated into the European Union. There's a lot of pressure and there's a lot of funding coming from that. The second issue, all of a sudden, we are dealing with some rising costs. And I won't go into it, although I'm an economist, but by and large, this has been generated by immigration. Large numbers of people have left the nation and they're sending money back. And all of a sudden, the price of apartments is more expensive. Salaries are more expensive. Everything is more expensive because, in a sense, we are competing with a Western European situation. Number three, we are seeing some NGO competition and duplication. This is probably going to be the most controversial thing that I'll talk about, but we're seeing that. We are seeing lots of people that have solutions in search of problems. I want to solve something, but I really don't have this. And the example that I normally give when I give talks like this is there are people who are looking for orphans to support, and there are not that many orphans, at least not in Romania. And again, this is something that's close to my heart because I was brought back to Romania to help the orphans, but now we don't have any more orphans. The state cleaned up its act. There are, other issues now. And the fourth one, it's Western donor fatigue. I remember talking to a donor who was telling me, look, I came to Romania first time in 1991, and it was though I was seeing a baby in the middle of the street that I just, wanted help, and I went back and I did everything possible to raise the funds and come back to Romania and help out. Now, and we're having this conversation about 2014, 2015. Now I get the sense that I'm dealing with a bratty teenager. Somebody who's complaining that their iPhone's not working, or somebody who's telling me that, some other thing like that. So we are experiencing and we are seeing this donor fatigue, where people are saying, look, we've helped you for the last 30 years. That should be enough. The other thing that's happening to some of us as we're traveling to our traditional partners, we end up there and they're telling us about all the other needs that are happening in other parts of the world, South America or Asia or things like that. And this is especially true in America, whereas my adopted nation. So let me shift gears and talk about how do we build a financially sustainable ministry. And as I already told you, I'd like to point out to four biblical principles. And I'm using scripture here, although I will be talking from a business perspective. So I am speaking as a consultant, as a management expert. I think the first principle is make sure you do not duplicate your effort. Make sure that the ministry that you are undertaking actually needs to be done. And I'm seeing a lot of that, especially in church planting. I'm seeing a lot of big cities that already have, a good number of churches, and then there's somebody planting another church. And I'm saying, well, is there really need for another church, or is there a place where you personally just want to be sort of in charge, and your friends want to be the elders of that particular church? And again, I don't mean to be critical, and I don't mean to call it out. But my biblical basis is what Paul writes to the Romans. And I like this verse. It has always been my ambition to preach the gospel where Christ was not known, so that I would not be building on someone else's foundation. So I really ask you to consider this principle of whether your ministry and the ministry that you are doing is needed, whether you are not duplicating the efforts of somebody else. The second principle is make sure that your ministry is of the highest quality. And I always use the Exodus 18 passage, which, by the way, we also use in modern day management, where Jethro comes to Moses, who has this great new opportunity, this great ministry with leading the Israelites out of Egypt and into the promised land. And he's saying, look, Moses, the way you're going about it is not professional. First of all, it's not sustainable. You're going to burn yourself out. You're literally going to die trying to solve all these issues. Second of all, there are people around you who are going to be very frustrated by this. So as I consult with a lot of nonprofits, I always use these verses. I actually use a third verse, which I didn't use here, from Romans chapter 3. And the question that I pose to people is, look, the ministry that you are doing, is it causing people to give glory to God or to curse God? Because I have seen, unfortunately, people that do such a poor quality in their work that you are embarrassed. You are embarrassed to take your friends to that particular church. You are embarrassed to take somebody to visit them there. And there's really no professionalism. I have seen NGO leaders that pride themselves that they have never read a management book. They pride themselves that they do not use Excel. They pride themselves of being anti-professionalism. And again, I use the words of our Lord Jesus, who says, the sons, the people of this age tend to be more professional, tend to be better, tend to be more, better off than what we're doing. So the second principle that I want to really advise you towards is make sure that you are properly organized. I'm going to talk about in a minute about the fundraising piece, and most of us who are in the nonprofit sector, we think that what we need is more money, but some of us are not aware that there's a direct correlation between our structure, our professionalism, and the kind of money that we attract. And oftentimes people looking at our ministry and looking at how we do things, quite frankly, they're turned off by it. Quite frankly, they don't want to donate. And we always seem to excuse it by the fact that there is a core number of beneficiaries that benefit from our services. Well, look, I'm handling these people in hospice. Look, I'm taking care of these kids who couldn't get an education if it wasn't for me. And somehow in our mind, we justify the lack of professionalism, and we do it because we do something good. So please remember these two sub-principles of this principle. Number one, make sure that people give glory to God. Everybody, all your stakeholders, government officials, people in the church, everybody gives glory to God. And number two, make sure that you don't burn yourself out. And there's a real danger of that. I have seen it so many times. People who are helping others burning out, not being helped themselves, being so disenchanted, being so bitter, being so disheartened. And yes, they always blame it on the situation. They always blame it on somebody who made a promise and didn't deliver or something like that. But ultimately, I think it is our responsibility to protect ourselves. It is our responsibility. So what I tell people, and again, I don't want to insult anybody, but I'm borrowing this from big tech in the Silicon Valley, is go big or go home. In other words, most of the Eastern European nonprofits, they are too small to be big and they're too big to be small. They're kind of like stuck in the middle. So my recommendation is either close down what you're doing if you're not going to grow it professionally, or make it big. make it big, have staff, have budget, have buildings, have all those things, including, and this is very controversial, borrow money, take out a loan and make an investment for whatever it is that you're trying to do, whether it's, building a website or building, finishing your school or things like that. So there is a lot to be said for professionalism. There's a lot to be said for organizations that are supposed to be giving glory to God. I'm mindful of the time. Number three, make sure that you realize the principle of fundraising and accountability. One of the biggest turnoffs that I have with clients and people that I talk to is when I meet a director of a nonprofit who says, look, I love the ministry, I just cannot stand fundraising, or I'm not good at fundraising. And typically my comeback is, well, that's kind of like the doctor saying that, he loves medicine, but he just can't stand patients. Fundraising is your ministry. And the biblical basis for this is Paul the Apostle. So Paul was the apostle to the Gentiles. He was sent by the church in Jerusalem to plant other churches to share the gospel. But at the same time, he was sent to raise funds. And we have 2 whole chapters in 2 Corinthians where he talks in details about fundraising. Many of the epistles that we read, such as Philippians, it's really a thank you letter. It's a newsletter / thank you letter for the fact that Philippians were participating financially to his ministry and his travels to Rome. So make sure that you accept this role for yourself. Don't try to farm it out to somebody else. If you are the director, if you're the founder of the nonprofit, you're the chief fundraising person. The second aspect is the aspect of accountability, and make sure you keep these 2 things in balance. Accountability, transparency is another word that I use very often. Give an account. Build yourself a board around you. That board is so beneficial, not only to help you raise funds, but also to keep you accountable, also to testify, also to educate. And one of the problems that I see very often in Eastern Europe are people raising funds for various projects, but having a very hard time raising funds for themselves and their needs. And that's a very debatable question. Sebastian, did you really need to spend money on this tie? Did you really need a car that was a Volkswagen? Couldn't you have bought just a Dacia? Wasn't that sufficient for you? Do you really need to build a house for yourself? And these are some of the questions that we as NGO leaders struggle with. And unless you have a good board, those issues are going to be always swords of subjects that are painful. Either because you are lacking and you don't have the right kind of money and the right kind of resources for you and your ministry, or because you have all kinds of reputational damages and people gossiping about you and people talking all kinds of nonsense. So remember these 2 sub-principles. 1, you have to do fundraising at your job. Do it professionally. Make sure you manage that database. Use crowdfunding if you want to. And I'm sure some of the speaker that will follow after me will talk about how to best do this. And number 2, make sure that you are well protected. Make sure that you have a board. Make sure that you have accountability, that you have transparency, that you give timely reports. Don't think that a good excuse, that a good justification will simplify this. Invest time and energy into this. If you can, and as your organization grows bigger, hire staff for this. Have a designated person who will raise money for you. One of the areas that we as a university have really been able to tap into is the diaspora. Folks that have left Romania and are now working outside Romania, who are quite generous. People who are willing to come back. Recently, we finished an online course called Teaching Business as a Mission. And it is really as an educational piece that we're sending to the diaspora, and not only as, hey, this is the kind of work that you could do. And I'm very happy to see that there are lots of other ministries who are doing this. Unfortunately, I see the left-leaning ministries, and I see the godless or the non-Christian ministries that tend to be much more better at this, the fundraising part, whether it's through phones, SMS, text message, or things like that, or otherwise. Anyway, I got a couple minutes left, so let me give you my fourth biblical principle. Understand, realize, and if at all possible, utilize the power of bivocational ministry. Now, I think that moving forward, this is going to be huge. And again, this is the model of Paul the Apostle. In Acts chapter 20, he says, I have not coveted anyone's silver or gold or clothing. You yourself, that with these hands of mine have supplied my own needs and the needs of my companions. The model of a bivocational minister, somebody who is in full-time ministry and somebody who is a full-time business person, is a biblical model. When you look at Paul the Apostle, God was able to use him probably more than all the other apostles. And I think that some of the reasons are because, number one, he was a business person, so he knew how to build tents, he knew how to do business, things like that. Number two, he was highly educated. He was able to speak 3 languages, and he could go, as we say today, he could stop traffic in places like Athens, places like Rome, and people listened to him. People sought him out as a speaker. And number 3, he was a driven individual. He did not feel sorry for himself. He did not whine about, well, this person is not doing this and that person is not doing that. So these are the 3 things that I recommend to you personally. And I think that as we move forward, these are going to be even more important in building ministry. I look forward to your questions. Blessings to you. We're very, very proud for all the work that you're doing. And I look forward to your questions at the Q&A time. Thank you.
Thank you, Sebastian. That's fantastic. Thank you for challenging us. And as Sebastian said, do put questions. If you disagree, maybe say that and put that in the Q&A and try and put it in the form of a question so that it can be responded to. But if you disagree, that's absolutely fine. We'd love to hear that. Just to say, the last speaker is a chap called Andy Street, and Andy's from the UK. And so some of those things that Sebastian's talked about will be interesting to hear from a UK, somebody who's invested in projects in other countries perspective. And I think it will be interesting to hear from Andy how he sees some of these things, some of these challenges that Sebastian has laid before us. So Sebastian, thank you for provoking us, and please do use the Q&A, do upvote. We are now going to hear a few talks from those leading ministries in Eastern Europe, in the Balkans. And our first speaker has had an incredibly busy year as refugees affected by the Russia-Ukraine war have poured into Moldova, and the organization he has run, or he does run, has stepped up in the face of those challenges. His organization has responded generously and significantly, particularly as Moldova is probably the poorest nation in Europe. And we've asked him to speak this morning about how to build a fundraising strategy that sustains the ministry in the face of all sorts of challenging circumstances. But Serghei and his team at Beginning of Life, I know because I've been there, don't make any excuses. They get on with it. So Serghei, I'm really glad that you can join us, and I'm going to hand over to you. Serghei, you're muted, so you'll just need to unmute.
Still, after 2 years staying in Zoom, we still have some challenges. Yeah, so thank you very much, James, and just glad to be with you today. I would love to share just a bit from our not big but still significant for our ministry experience. You're right, James, that it is so difficult to speak about sustainability in general in such not stable times, which probably most of our countries, of all of the speakers, have lived through, some in decades, some in centuries, living in instability. And in this sense, when we started our ministry called Beginning of Life, it's a national organization, we wanted just to bring bring sustainability, bring transformation and change in the local context, just to respond on the most acute challenges that communities, families, individuals are just seeing every day. And in this sense, we started purely as a individual initiative of one person who wanted to change something. And through this process, we have developed different projects. We have developed different centers in Moldova. And at the moment, we realized, looking back, we realized that we needed to understand some things. And in understanding and developing, probably this is our strategy in fundraising as beginning of life. Yeah, what we need to understand. First of all, we need to understand the cause. And that's why we started to engage in understanding people and listening their voice. When you listen the voice of certain people and families and community, then we started to understand that, oh, we need to understand and develop our knowledge, build the knowledge in context, why these people are in this challenge. Yeah, understanding context, we are coming to, and if you allow me, I will demonstrate some, okay. Yeah, you see, it's not, it is, well vision. So after understanding the cause and understanding the context, where and why it's happening, then we started to build a project on a clear understanding what it is and what it's all about. After that, we started to build a team around this response, because we understand we are all in God's mission. It's not our mission. God is really moving us towards that. And after that, in this role of understanding, that was the understanding of partners. Because usually in our context, in Moldovan context especially, it is so often fundraising is perceived as just simply as begging or arm twisting. But we believe, here in Moldova, we believe that fundraising is not about arm twisting and begging for money for some stuff. It's about finding the right people who believe in the same cause and want to make a change, make a difference in someone's lives. And in this sense, we try to connect all these points. And in this sense, we were developing all the ministry, responding on a human trafficking cause and phenomena that was, for so many years happening and still happening here. Today, we have hundreds of thousands refugees coming through the countries, and most of the countries who will speak, leaders have experienced something like that. And we need to respond on that somehow. And for that, you need resources. So in this sense, we were trying all the time to build the story around the certain problem, certain challenge, and find right people. This is probably the thing that is usual for fundraising. And what is needed in sustainability? I need to understand, admit that word sustainability was a bit challenging for us, because all the time we were telling that, oh no, inside Moldova, the poorest country in Europe, it is impossible to find any money for any resources, for helping people, for helping families and communities. But in time, we started to learn and realize that, we actually can when we started our social enterprise called Art Story. It is about small toys like you see on these screen, a rabbit. We started with a doll that was telling the story of young girls who have been trafficked and who were going through restoration and reintegration. And we were telling this story to people who were just visiting Moldova as a tourist. And then people started to pop up and saying, oh, we want to listen more. We want to learn and to really step together and join you in these great cause. After that, we were working for more than 20 years in public schools, bringing awareness and sustainability among young people, young generation. And this real experience of working with young people really gave us possibility to learn how to bring and lead training process. And in this sense, all this experience in dealing with young people, we brought into new social enterprise called Urban Event Lab, where we use our experience in working with young people in bringing it into public and business sector, where business companies really try to build their own teams. They want to bring new values and mission, develop somehow their own mission. And we offer them our experience, and they give us their resource, and we use this resource for mission. In this sense, we have developed a second or third cause called Urban Cafe, as possibility for young people to stay, and people in general to come and stay in a cozy place and to learn more about new things. And in this sense, all these causes bring and strengthen the sustainability of local projects, local organization, and give for the team a sense of really strong possibilities and strong potential. And these they are sharing for with other people. So this is what the Beginning of Life is doing. These three, we have attempted different things, but we decided to just use these ones as our strong sides of our team, and then we send this and shared with other people. So this is what I wanted to say, and thank you, James, for offering this space, and I hand it to you.
Thanks, Serghei. Thank you for sharing a little bit of the story. Serghei, I'm going to need you to stop sharing your screen, if that's all right. Thank you so much for sharing that story. And I think one of the things that strikes me that you guys have done is that you've looked at what you've got. You've looked at what God has given you as resources, and you've responded to those opportunities with intentional steps forward. So thank you for sharing some of that with regards to the businesses that you've set up. I've seen the shop. I've heard about the events business that you guys are running. So thank you for sharing that this morning. If you've got questions for Serghei, do put them in the Q&A. So our next speaker is Artur Krasniqi. And when I met Artur, I discovered that he and I were about the same age, but I found myself thinking, how did this man do so much? He's an entrepreneur, he's a church leader, and he's done all sorts of amazing things. And last autumn, I had the opportunity to visit some of the small businesses that they run in Pristina, in Kosovo, and just to see those projects was such an inspiration to me. So I wanted Artur to come and share some of the story about how the shops that they run were started, and how they've kept and sustained the ministry that they run in another country that's faced all sorts of uncertainties over the years. So really pleased to have you with us, Artur. I'm going to hand it to you now.
Thank you, James, and good afternoon to everyone. It is an honor and also a joy to be able to share the story of Kosovo with you. I hope to be an encouraging story, but at the same time, yeah, challenge, especially those of you from Eastern Europe, Balkans, or somehow that are involved in this part of the world, to see opportunities instead of always just difficulties and impossibilities that this region offers. I'm very glad that Sebastian already set a great platform that as Christians and as church doing business is biblical, because I think that has been one of the greatest challenge in this part of the world, especially when we start thinking about starting a business as a church, answering those people who think that, you know, this is unbiblical, or that being business is a worldly thing, or we should separate these things and so on. And I'm sure that churches in Europe, but particularly in our part of the world, many times deal or face challenges like this. How do we answer to a situation like that? However, after the war in Kosovo in 1999, in spite of the church work, we got involved in many of the ministries with an organization called House of Hope, which was a local NGO, and our efforts were mainly done trying to bring hope to the young people in the country. This ministry grew, and we got involved in several parts of Kosovo. Hundreds of youth and teenagers were coming through our centers, and very short, our programs were supported by international organizations from the Western world. So we start doing all the proposals and got funds, and we were able to do some great successful ministry in reaching young people throughout Kosovo. Organizations, some state and some non-governmental organizations were supporting this ministry. And then surprisingly to us, and I'm sure to everyone, the year 2008 came, which was mentioned earlier. That was the year of the crisis. So out of just surprise, we were receiving emails and information that we are sorry, but we have to cut all the support. And we just pray and hope that you can continue. And we were sitting, we had all these people who were employed and actually work that we started and going on, and suddenly came into situation that everything was going to collapse, literally because 100% all our ministry was supported from outside, or was coming from outside funds, which just out of nowhere, now they were stopping because of the economic crisis. So this somehow pushed us to the idea, which actually we were thinking before, but scared to think, can we do something to self-sustain ourselves? Is there a thing that can be done in Kosovo that helped? So in 2009, we came with an idea of starting our first secondhand shop. Now, till that time, we were distributing clothes and shoes and things we got from Western countries, like probably all of you do. And people came, they took when it was free. Why not? I mean, even they say in English, even vinegar is sweet when it's free. So everyone wanted to take things from us like that. And some say thank you, some not. And now we said, well, we are not going to give free. We will start a shop where we're going to sell things. A ministry that is known for you in the Western world, but not in the Balkans. So yeah, the challenge was how to answer these questions. First, to those who will say, well, why do you sell humanitarian aid? Secondly, how to fix this legally with the government. So we had to work with the government and find a legal way, which in our situation helped us, that our country had a very good legal platform when it comes to religious community self-supporting. The Orthodox Church, particularly here, and some other large religions had a very strong platform of self-supporting. And therefore, the legal bases were great, but we were not using it. So we started our first secondhand shop with all the fears, will it function? To our surprise, the first day was beyond our expectation, beyond what we could think, that really people came and supported. So to make this story short, we continue with our shop and start opening new shops throughout Kosovo, and found out that legally, the church were exempt of all the profit taxation as far as these resources were going to the poor and needy people, or it was going to help the ministries. So in a year time, we managed not just to support 100% all the ministry that we were doing, that till now were supported from outside, but to even extend and expand more of the work that we were doing. So we were able to tell our partners throughout Europe that none of the work that we started with them did not close, actually grew, and now it was supported from Kosovo 99%. So it was not that money was coming from outside. In a period of 3 years, we opened 6 shops. So we have 6 shops throughout Kosovo, which includes 18 full-time workers that are working full-time, meaning that there are families who make income from the work there, selling in these shops or doing other work. We have 9 places of rent that we rent shops where we are working. And about 14 trucks or lorries that we received a year from outside. Some of them, we're fully covering ourselves, so it's supported from Kosovo as they come from outside. So throughout these now 12 years, 13 years, we've been able to support the work of the House of Hope, help the ministry, not just of our local church, but helping other local churches in the country that are not ours, but are going through challenges, be able to support the biggest part of the Bible school, and help many Christians to understand how important it is that we as Christians can do something to self-sustain ourselves instead of just always hoping and praying that somebody from outside is going to support us. So Mosaic secondhand shops became a great tool, a great source of support and sustainability financially for not just our local church, but for the ministry and the work in Kosovo. So if it has worked in a country considered to be poor with all the challenges, I think it can work in other parts of the world as well, and particularly in the Balkans. Yes, there are difficulties and challenges why people, I see, sometimes hesitate to do this. Why? Because it is a lot of work. So it requires work. And I think without really, because I'm pastor myself, standing, but in this part of the world, we don't like that so much. We try to do something that is easy, that, shortly, we don't have to do all the time. This requires work, sometimes more than 8 hours a day, and requires also accountability. I mean, you have to do books, you have to do financial, you have to keep the records. It's not easy just to say, God knows, he's seen from heaven and it's happy, but you have to keep bookkeeping. So sometimes people come, so wow, you have all these files, you have all this stuff doing bookkeeping. So it requires that as a ministry, as a church, you are accountable to authorities because they can control you anytime. So now you have to play the same rules that are applied with other businesses, which sometimes in church we don't like because we like to use these gray zones where we don't report and, they are our brothers, they understand, they know we are doing for God. In this case, no, we have to fully be able to show what we are doing. And of course, there's a danger how to keep the balance because we are still a church. We still have to do ministry we continue to do. But how come that, we save in that way or balance in that way that the ministry or the business that we're doing can bless the work and bless the ministry and not just become a burden? Because sometimes you have to stop and see, well, is this too much? Should we lower this and increase this? So it's not always like it flows like that. No, you have to understand. But in this 13 years, I'm happy to say that we were able to support many of the ministries and bless many of the work outside of Kosovo, not just in our country, but outside of our country, support many poor families and be able to provide their needs now, not just clothes, but by selling clothes, we can buy medication for them that before we were not able to give, or give them something that they need, and it is needed exactly or answers their need instead of just say, well, we have clothes and shoes, but also helped us as Christians to be able to think business-wise in this country. Therefore, it helped House of Hope itself to start looking that some of these programs that we offer, like English courses, other training, sewing classes, that we can start generating income from that and start to build a self-sustained ministry. Or like with the Roma women, we start making bags that we are selling so they can work in this sewing class. So it helps that they can also find a job within our center by being trained by us and helping that it is okay, it is nice, and should be done by Christians that we raise support financially. So it's a little story of Kosovo that has helped us in these 13 years. And I just wanted to share that the story of Mosaic, I think, can apply in other countries, and I think it can be a blessing for the church in the Balkans. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Artur. Great story. And having been in the shops, there's, amazing employees who are passionate as well. And I think I'm right in saying that not all the employees are Christians. And so in and of itself, it's a great witness. It's a great witness as a piece of outreach, not just as a business. And so just, I love these shops, and I think they're just a phenomenal example of how God has used business and ministry to come together. Now, listening to both Serghei and to Artur, what you'll have heard there is years of experience of trying things. Things haven't always gone to plan, but they've continued, they've persevered, and that's why they've got the experience that they have under their belts. So thank you, Artur, for sharing that story. And if you're in Pristina, can I recommend you go and get yourselves new shirts at one of the Mosaic shops, because they're I got one when I was there, so they're fantastic. So we have got some questions. Thank you for those questions. So I'm going to start, Sebastian, with a couple of questions from you. So this is where we'll need to be a little bit more agile with our muting and unmuting. So I'll try and be that as well. But the first question comes from Vesna. Thank you, Vesna, for the question. She says, thank you for the presentation, Sebastian. Especially appreciated the part on doing our work with excellence and professionality. My question is about the board. As we need to invite more people to our board to move from working board to governing board, do you have any specific points about who to invite to the board? Any advice or precautions?
Wow, that's a loaded question, because the board will set your strategy and your image out there. So my first advice is be patient. You're not going to be able to have an ideal board in your very first day. Second of all, expect some problems and build that into your structure. In other words, you invite somebody on the board, make sure you also have a way to remove them from the board. The third advice that I have, and I use the saying, which hopefully will translate well into English, I say that in Romania, we bury dead people with dirt and we bury living people with paperwork. Make sure that you have the proper bureaucracy. Artur alluded to that, including with the board. Make sure that you have very clear expectation as to what is it that you want them to do. What are their limits? Do you want them to get into operational, so on and so forth? Because oftentimes what happens, you will invite people who oftentimes they're your donors. And if you do not have very clear delimitations as to what they can and cannot do, you're going to get into trouble. But overall, my advice is to keep building on that. Keep building on those individuals. Ideally, you should have between 5 and 7 people on the board. Rotate them, keep them there for a term of 1 year or maybe 3 years, and then rotate them and rely on their counsel to really grow the organization, both financially, but especially professionally. Have a mixture there between business people, pastoral people. Don't go too much in one direction or another. If it's all pastors, they're not going to be able to help you with the business sense. If it's all business people, there's not going to be necessarily a lot of spiritual conversation or things like that, just because of the nature of things. So make sure you keep it well balanced.
Thank you, Sebastian. Appreciate that. I'm going to throw a question at you, Serghei, if that's all right. one person has asked, Andrew has asked about the challenge of the change of perception for nations. So nations in Eastern Europe now being perceived as having less need, and as Sebastian said, governments have stepped in, and there's EU money perhaps pouring into countries like Moldova. How do you keep your mission effort relevant and keeping sponsors, supporters, donors engaged in what you do?
Thank you for, also very loaded with sense and with consequences question. So actually, Moldova is moving towards the same status as Romania and Bulgaria, to be a EU member. And it includes a lot of changes in legislation and changing perception of Moldova as just one of the members of all these EU family, and in this sense, then you stay in the same line with Germany, France, Italy, and it means that you don't need resources anymore, and we will redirect them. In this sense, we have used this situation, and still changing. The perception is changing anyway. We have used that in different ways. So first of all, with the changing perception changes also the list of opportunities. So there, we needed to change our approach for example, for writing the project proposal. We needed to learn what it means, to build a matrix of activities and logical frames and all what is difference between impact and income and outcomes and so on. So we needed to learn many things. We needed to learn how to work in a more strict frame. And this is one of the things. Another thing is that sometimes the perception of general picture of what is in the news. For example, I will take a short, very recent example with Ukraine. Since 24th of February, everyone, the whole world was talking about the war in Ukraine and what is happening there. In March, we have been receiving messages from even partners who didn't like us from the start, but they approached us and said, we have resources we want to give you as you engaging with helping emergency situation with refugees. And at one moment we thought, it is good, but fundraising for refugee cause was kept on this high top until headlines of the news channels were talking about that. And after that, it dropped. And as the situation with the war still continue to be there, people get used to that, and in this sense, they start to think about different issues, different challenges, and then we remain now with 80,000 Ukrainian people who have nothing here. And how to respond on that? And we started to tell their stories, listen their voice and try to speak to people and still write down the picture and the story already, not to twist their arms, but to really build the clear understanding how they can join and what they can do. So people all the time are giving some resources in order to see the added value. In the business, it's very clear. You give 50 to receive 75. In social, in ministry, it's hard to talk about that, but we still want to show how these small resource that people are giving, not from their abundance, but from their vulnerabilities, financial vulnerability today, how these will give and build the kingdom of God and build the changes in the life of people who are in a much worse situation. So
Serghei, thank you. Yeah, no, thank you. And I think what I liked about your presentation was you started with the cause, that idea of cause, and so understanding the need, I think, is really important. And not just setting up an idea, setting up a project based on a whim or an idea is absolutely key. But thank you for sharing some of your insight, and particularly with the Ukraine situation in mind. I got a question now with regard to the bivocational ministry. You sparked some thinking there, Sebastian, which is good. So I'm actually going to, initially, I'm going to come to you, Artur, and then I'm going to come back to Sebastian. Because Artur, you're a pastor and you're running these businesses. A couple of people asked about this. One person just said, it may give people in particular fields more credibility, but for pastors and evangelists, can they really do more actually if they're just fully supported from another country? So I don't know, do you want to just respond to that, Artur, as a pastor, as an evangelist, and as someone who's set up businesses?
Well, first of all, I'm not the person that I am running the whole business. So I think it's very important that when these things are done, that yourself, but also the church, make clear to find people from the church who can look after managerial part of it. And I'm not also controlling or I don't have hands in the finances. I think it will save every pastor, every minister, if you make sure that you're done. So I'm not running in town. I'm not going to these shops to be seen there, because I know I will give free all the things to people, maybe, or when people say, "Oh, pastor, can I have this free?" So I think it's very important that you make a clear demarcation between the ministry and that. However, I believe that it's important the church has not just ownership, but also somehow the guidance and control in it, because there's also a danger that this ministry becomes completely I don't know how in the best way to say, but outside of the church hands, and then finally it has nothing to do with the church, or becomes independent in the way, and it's outside of church hands. In our context, legally we're well protected, because by the law here, businesses are exempt from VAT, from the profit tax and custom tax, if the money goes to the church or to the social ministry of the church. So if the church is the owner of it, and in our case, church is the owner of the secondhand shop Mosaic. So if I own, or a personal or individual owns, or becomes independent, then it will go through all the taxations and all the legal, the paying taxes, which will be quite difficult. So that is a part that helps. However, yes, I believe it's important that these things are clearly made clear who is a pastor, and not running there also as a sales manager or other kind of businessman into the shops.
Thank you, Artur. Sebastian, can I just put some flesh on the bones of this question? Let's put it into a real situation. A pastor in a smallish church doesn't necessarily have lots of potential people around them. The challenge there, somebody gives the example of a pastor will want to give, for example, if he creates some jobs, probably want to give the job to somebody he sees as having great need, but not necessarily the right person for the job. So these are some of the tensions, I suppose, when we talk about, bivocational ministry. How would you respond to that? Any advice?
Well, it's a complicated issue, and I think that we are mashing a couple of things that historically have been distinct. Keep in mind that we have a few hundred years of professional ministers. So we have the Catholic tradition, the Orthodox tradition, and including the Protestant tradition, where there was supposedly a big pot of money or government money that paid for the salary of somebody to do nothing but just pastor. And even the Neo-Protestants have a tradition where we say, we will set a person aside, we will sanctify him, and that person will do nothing outside of servicing the church. And I think it's a biblical model. If the person is depending on the church for his personal financial need. I think that the bivocational model works much better in an evangelistic or a church planting situation, where you do not have the community of individuals to support you financially. And I think that the first challenge is, how can the minister support himself and his family? I think that what you're describing, where there's going to be a challenge whether we give the job to a church member or somebody like that, that's a little far off. Typically, things get complicated when you get a third party in here, which is a Western donor. Somebody who comes in, and I call it a third party pay system, where there's a third party donor, gives the money, I do the ministry or I service somebody, but that somebody, the beneficiary, receives my services without necessarily paying for it. But I think that the two models, if you have a community that actually can afford to pay you, and it's simple mathematics, 10 families that should give their tithe to the church, you should be able to live at their standard, at their level. And then you should dedicate yourself just to full-time ministry and educate those people to be generous. If you don't have those 10 families and that community, then the model of a bivocational minister works much better. When it comes to planting a new church or going somewhere else, the big difference in my experience, and this is controversial, is bivocational ministers have a lot more credibility. And the way I teach my students is the difference between a paid salesperson and a satisfied customer. If I'm paid by the church or by a sponsor, obviously I'm going to tell people to come to church. I'm going to tell people to become Christians. And people will look at me and say, well, that's his job. He gets paid to do that. We're not really sure if he believes that. As a bivocational person who doesn't necessarily make a living from the ministry, you're a satisfied customer. You're somebody who's living it. And I think that you have a lot more effectiveness. And by the way, this is why I think that Paul was so much more effective than the other disciples in the early church. Because he had that drive and because he had that credibility, people around him just naturally came and wanted to meet with him.
Thank you, Sebastian. Well, on that, we'll just have a pause for a couple of minutes, let people draw breath. That's well, folks, hope you've grabbed your coffees, and I hope you're finding this interesting. I think you won't necessarily agree with everything that's being said, but that's okay. I hope it's making everyone think, and it's certainly making me think. And I'm really grateful to our speakers so far who've shared their stories. Coming up, we're going to have Sasha, who's going to be talking to us from a Roma context, which I'm really looking forward to. And then we're going to have Nesha, who's going to be sharing a bit about setting up a business in his church. And then finally, Andy from the UK, who's going to be sharing from a different perspective, I suppose, the perspective of someone who's supported others to set up business. Just as you're coming back, one of the dangers of an event like this is that it can be interesting, it can be hopefully inspiring, maybe we get some additional ideas, but because we're busy people, and I know you're all busy people, so I'm really grateful that you're with us, we don't do anything with some of the fresh thinking or the ideas that we've got. So I just want to encourage everyone that it would be a good idea to write down one action that you might take as a result of hearing from our speakers today. And perhaps, maybe we as those on this as speakers will also do that. So, perhaps that's something like sharing your idea. I don't know how Artur felt when he first had this idea of the second-hand shops, or Serghei when they wanted to set up the little businesses. But sometimes when we have that idea, we're hesitant to share it because we feel others might not like it or might not think it's a very good idea. But if you've got an idea, share it with someone who might help you plan it, coach you even into developing it into a small business. And if it's not a viable idea, that becomes apparent, that becomes clear, doesn't it, as we talk about these things. But ideas only become reality because people take steps forward. So please, can I encourage you to write one action at least that you might do as a result of today. And don't forget to put questions in the chat. Thank you for the questions that we've already had. I'm gonna, without any further ado, I'm gonna hand over now to Sasha Subotin. Sasha is a pastor and also heads up businesses in his locality. And I don't know Sasha particularly well. We've met a couple of times, but we were put in touch by Roma Network. So just a big thank you to Nina Jankicic, who put us in touch. I'm sure some of you know Nina. And when I read Sasha's story on the Roma Network's website, I was super inspired by it. And, I know that there are perhaps some other unique circumstances in Roma settings that Sasha may touch on as he shares his story. So Sasha, I'm going to hand over to you now.
Thank you so much. And may God bless you all. And I appreciate that I can share my story and what God's doing here in North Serbia with us, with Romas. So I'm a pastor, I'm a church planter, but also somewhere in the challenges what is came in ministry, I also was the first man in the church who started a business and encourage others to do that. So we are working with Romas, and we start like, let's say, 2010, and we believe that the word of God is important. That is first and important things to bring to the Romas, and of course to help them to change the life. So believe that God can change my life, and through my life can change your life, and so the multiplication to go, that God is changing our lives. So when I start to be pastor, I have a dream. I have a dream, I will be pastor, I will have a church building, I will have a salary, I will have a car, I will have this, I will have that, somebody who will take all the cost, but mine is only to go to preach the word of God. So that was my dream. And this, what I say, is honest, and yeah, that was my beginning. So I have a team around me who was pray for that. We share the needs, and day by day, God was opening the door, and He gave to my heart Matthew 25, verse 35 till 40. I was hungry, I was thirsty, I was naked, I was in prison, all these things. And I took this as my vision, and I look how I can help the Romas. So how I say, that was my dream, that was my vision. God, step by step, God was lead and give these things to me. He gave a house, He gave a church building, He gave a car, He gave a team, He gave opportunities, everything what was the need, God was give us. Praise the Lord, we have a good sponsors, and yeah, we are thankful for that. But somewhere in all this work, bringing the gospel, I feel that, yeah, I was always begging. Oh, we have this project. Can you help with this? We have winter is coming. Can you help with the wood? We have a winter is coming. Can you help with food for poor ones? We have a children. They need a lot of things for the school. So somewhere always was okay. I begging, not for me, but for others, And of course, always we go to the Lord. But when you go to the Lord, you say, then you share your need with others. And sometimes more, my trust was not to the Lord, was more to the sponsors. I say this honest. And okay, 2016, we start with some ideas how to lead the to have a business. So one of my friends borrowed a big piece of land. We invest in broom and beans. So was everything okay? The harvest was come of the broom. We have a company who want to buy that. Excellent. 25 workers supposed to come to have the harvest. But one important thing was that I was not know. Nobody say to me, if you finish harvest and broom stay on the fields and rain come, everything is destroyed. So let's say we invest 1,200 euro in this. Next morning, I was happy. We bring with the tractors to the company our product, and they say, sorry, that is not good. We can pay you only 500 euro for this. So I first time say, oh, I have minus of 700 euro. What I will do? Beans was better. And then we talk and say, okay, no more. We are not for business. We cannot do that. Then is coming my friends from Holland and say, why you not start with greenhouses? And then, yeah, we say we are sorry. We feel that we spend money and we don't have good result how we promised that we will have. Okay, they say start with greenhouses. Maybe they encourage us. So we took 3 greenhouses and we start to plant tomatoes. Was excellent. Paprikas, cucumbers. First year was excellent. And but again, somewhere I was feel that I miss education, how to lead the business training, let's say in some words. And then coming a person to my life, organization who say, okay, we can give you $500, but you must be on business training. This business training was 6 months. And I feel they, do this like sponge, that I am totally dry. 6 months we talk same for $500. Somewhere it was not wise that I say, but I say to the organization, thank you, I don't need your money. 6 months we talk about that, and sorry, I lose my patience for that, and I'm thankful for your help. But it was not wise for me, because this time I need $500 to buy greenhouse, to invest, etc. I was think I know everything, but I was not know nothing. Later, what I was go deeper and deeper, and I remember and look on my notes what we was right this time on business training. I say, oh, I make mistake here. I make mistake here. Oh, I was not right that. I was not calculate. My second mistake was when we start to produce the flowers. One woman, my friends, she said to me, okay, I saw your business, your work, and I want to bless you with some, let's say, with some flowers. She gave me 200 plants. We sell these to 150 plants for 1 day. And then we say, oh, we can have the money from here. So she helped us that we can do the business with flower plants. Among all these things, we have a lot of projects to help the poor ones, to help the Romas, to change the life. We send the Romas to evening, primary evening school. We provide a lot of warm meals for the poor one, help the children to go in the school. Let's say that kids from 10 years ago, we have 60% in school. Today, we have 100%. 10 years ago, we have in high school 30%. We have today 100% in high school, even some children in university. So everything, start to grow. People was looked at and they was happy. And then when we start with flowers was excellent. But I was not wise again. Everybody who came to me from my village, oh, how is going business? Oh, excellent. Business with flowers is excellent business. What's happened? Next year, 5 more families start to have business with flowers. So we have now concurrency, what we will do. Then we decide to say, okay, people, if you buy from us flowers, tomatoes, vegetables, fruit, you help us that our project can go on. So you buy flower, you help for a food project, you help vegetables, you help for children project. So people find somewhere it's better to buy from them and help in this way than to give the money. In all these years, one thing was touching me, very important thing. I have been in Romania, and I was a conference ownership and development, and I am so thankful for that. And was a kind of workshop. And then one old man from Holland was few of us it, and he started. We are partners in one church in East Europe. More than 20 years, sorry. Every year they ask the same: wood, food, clothing, car for pastor, money for that, money for that. They never say, okay, this winter we need 10 meter cubic. Please, we collect money for 2 meter of wood, cubic of wood. Can you help us with 8 more? They always begging. And how this old man talk more and more, I find me smaller and smaller. What my sponsor thinks about me and all my questions and asking and begging. So when I came back home, I say, I will change that. God help me. I believe that even we are Romas, we can change that and we can provide also something from our things. So immediately I write the project and look, this we can sponsor, this we need half, this we need 100% from the sponsors. So we are going, encourage people, also help them to work in different ways. You can make questions, you can get my email, I can answer you. I have now only 10 minutes and now it's almost end. So I must stop. You can have questions from me and I will answer and help you about all these things. So God was help us this year and last year was excellent. 700 meals we provide for poor ones, 30% sponsor pay, 70% we pay, and many other things we do. So if you want to start your business, I finish with this. Have a vision, look around, never say to the others what you will do, your plans. Keep this only with people who you trust, and always used to be trained from the people who have a lot of experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Sasha. That's great. Thank you for sharing your story. And I think that's a really powerful story. I picked up those things around, just your mistakes. Thank you for your honesty as well. And just sharing that, this isn't an easy road and we're not, assuming it is. So I'm sure people would have appreciated you just sharing your ups and downs, because that's the reality of life and business. Just to draw out that statistic that is an amazing statistic about the education, the impact on the education in your community. That is wonderful to hear that is making a difference among the Roma kids. Your business is doing more than just raising money, it's changing the community. And that's the power of this sort of thing. So thank you so much, Sasha. Our next speaker is Nenad Radeka, and Nesha is also another pastor with an entrepreneurial spirit. And I can remember with Nesha when we first talked about his idea to build a business in the church, I couldn't help but be inspired. And we at 10 have had a privilege of being a small part of this story. And it gives me real joy to welcome you, Nesha. Over to you.
Good day, everyone. Thank you, James, for the opportunity to share about our business in Novi Sad, Serbia. I'm Nenad Radeka. If you're my friend, you can call me Nesha. I'm a spiritual and business entrepreneur, and my wife, Vesna, and I, we were missionaries and church planters in Bosnia and Herzegovina and Serbia too. And so far, we were part of 6 church planting endeavors. Our last church that we planted in 2010 is Nexus Church in Novi Sad. As most of you know, Novi Sad is the 2nd largest city in Serbia. Belgrade is the capital. And in 2016, we miraculously got a church building. That's a whole another story. But the building that we basically inherited was a 2-story building, 640 square meters net, under the roof with doors and windows. Actually, no doors, just windows, but just plain walls, concrete, cement, not even drywalls on the walls. So we moved in 2016 with no toilets, no electricity, no running water. And I remember those times when I would each Sunday morning stand in front of the congregation. Our church is not large, a big church. It's 60 to 70 adults at the time, and I would stand in front of them, and I would ask a question. I would say, "Hey guys, how do we eat an elephant?" And they would say, "Bite by bite." And then I would ask them, "Hey, how do we build a church?" And they would answer. They would respond, brick by brick. And there was such an excitement that we did have so little, but we believe that we can build and complete the building, the church building, step by step, brick by brick. And that's exactly what happened. So last year, we were able to complete the ground, the 0th floor and the 1st floor. And then I was thinking, wow, God has never made a chair and God has never made a table. He made a tree. So humans make chairs and humans make tables. And I was thinking, well, this building is an asset. This building is a talent, if we recall to the New Testament story. So what we do with this building, it is going to be our gift to God. It is going to be our gift to the ministry and to ourselves. So at that time, I was thinking, well, I'm in a fundraising ministry since I was basically 17 years old, and actually right today I'm 48. And I know the struggle. I know the internal struggle when it comes to fundraising and all the necessities and all the battles that it is a hard work to fundraise for the ministry. And although Serbian economy is growing, actually booming in the last 6 or 7 years, there is a plenty of work, plenty of jobs around us, and our GDP is growing fast in recent years. I remember I told to myself and I told to my colleagues in the church and my friends, I said, well, an average Christian, evangelical Christian, even though they want to be a good Samaritan to someone, they cannot afford it. So if we remember the story of a good Samaritan from a New Testament, and we take word for word, if we find someone who is beaten on the streets, we would need to put him in a hotel for 3 or 4 days, right? 4 days, with a full course. I mean, breakfast, lunch, and a tea, what you would say UK tea, like 3 meals a day. You would need to cover all his medical expenses, and that's quite a lot of money. I mean, to do that today. So I said to myself, why don't we use this building to start a business and generate local funds instead of constantly depending from the funds from abroad, from US or UK or Canada? And the first idea actually was to open a co-working center in our church building or business hub to rent a chair and rent a desk. That was very popular some 2 or 3 years ago. People stopped renting, especially IT guys. They stopped renting offices and other businesses. They wanted to rent a chair or rent a desk. So I was fascinated with that idea. We wanted to do that. But then in meantime, we changed our course, we changed our mind, and we opened up a soft play, indoor play. I hope you all understand what soft play, Americans say soft play, I guess. And it's indoor play. So indoor play equipment, I don't know how it is in other Eastern European countries or other countries in Europe, but since most of Serbian families, every Serbian family lives in a tiny home, when your child have a birthday, then you take him to a birthday party place, to an indoor playground. So that's what we do. On our first floor, we put all the equipment and for soft play. So we invite, we start advertising, and we started to rent it out for birthday parties. So we started in August last year, and we were quite clumsy. did have some business experience, but no business experience in this kids industry. But we were very courageous. We were very brave. We started it, and in August we had one birthday party booking. Then in September last year we had 6. In October we had 30. In November 33. In December 44. So this October in 2022 we have 70 bookings, and our capacity is 71. So we have 71 capacity, and we have 70. We are close to 100 bookings, 100% bookings a month. And our revenue in October this year, I mean, we are in the middle of October, but I know because it's all booked, and how much we are going to sell, we will have a revenue close to 10,000 euros just this month. That's a revenue. I know I'm not talking about profit because we need to account all the expenses, but our profit would be between 2,000 3,000 euros a month, and I consider that as a huge success. So we are operating basically on 2 well-known platforms: business for the mission and business as a mission. So as I define it, or even some other people define business for the mission, it's when you have a business and you use the profit to run the ministry and to support the ministries, the church ministries. And then business as a mission is when you have a business and then you have employees that are, in our case, we have 70% of Christians, non-believing employees. So business as a mission serves as we give an example of Christ-like behavior and Christ-like life. So we treat them well, we pay them well, we are there for them, and they are really very excited to work for us and work with us. And next week, for instance, there is a Global Leadership Summit in Belgrade. We will take all our available employees and we'll take them to the summit, where they will be exposed not just to business and leadership skills, but also to Christian values, how to do business and how to live your daily life. So yeah, I think that's what I wanted to say in short about Nexus Play business. And you can see all the photos. I can post a link to our Instagram page, so you can see all the pictures, all the videos of the facility. I really appreciate when what Sebastian said at the beginning of doing the business with a high quality. Our church building, our Nexus Play, is beautiful, very well decorated. Beautiful colors. It's all very stylish, modern, fancy. People are just fascinated with the beauty. So you can also, on Google Maps, you can also read the reviews that we had. And I'm really proud of our people and our team that work hard to make it possible for our people to enjoy it and just love to book our place for their kids' birthdays. I don't know if anything missed, but I think
Nesha, thank you. That's great. That's
yeah. Also, I just wanted to mention. Sorry for interruption, James. Just to recall on another thing that Sebastian mentioned, which is us being brave or not hesitating to take a loan. That's exactly what we did. So when we started a business, I think the budget for opening a business was over, I don't have all the figures in front of me, but it was over 30,000 euros. I mean, we had to invest a lot into the kids cage, so-called kids cage, and then Sony PlayStations, and then laser maids and other things. So mostly it was donations from different churches, different organizations from the States and UK, but we also took a loan. And now we are paying it back for the next 5 years. And it's, you know, when you consider our revenue and our profit, it's almost nothing to us. It's what it is called a cheap money that we got, so we are able to give it back. So we are also thinking about starting new businesses, like a cafe business. It's close to completion, so we are just thinking of when and how we are going to open it for the public. But then our plan is to open a Nexus bed and breakfast, Nexus Learn, which it is going to be also a place to older kids to come after or preschool to do a homework and spend some time with us while their parents are busy.
Great, thanks, Nesha. Thank you so much for sharing your story. And yeah, that's fantastic. It is an inspiration to me. And I think hopefully what you've got here is some different stories. You know, you've got Sasha's story from you know, around the agricultural projects. You've got a church in an urban setting in Novi Sad. You've got Chisinau, and then dotted around Kosovo, different shops in different sized towns. So hopefully you're picking up something, because there's different stories here for each of us. But one of the things you might have heard Nesha's story there and thought, well, my building's not big enough to run a soft play, but I want to encourage you really to think about what you have got, not what you haven't got. Start with the resources you have and grow. And I think actually each of these stories I've heard has started in that way. It started small and maybe with some mistakes, but things have grown as a result of that intentional step-by-step approach. God will give you what you need if this is something that it's right to get going. So our final speaker is a friend of 10, Andy Street. Andy's got lots of business experience that I don't have time to tell you about, but he's a founding director of a consulting firm, and he does lots of work in the city of Bristol in the UK, involved in charitable initiatives here. I've appreciated his wisdom and his good questions of me in my work. And although he's currently in Australia, so we're really grateful to you, Andy, for being with us. I guess it's late with you. We're really grateful to you. I'm going to hand over to you just to share a little bit about your perspective and perhaps some stories of why you've done what you've done. Over to you, Andy.
It's good to be with you. Greetings from Sydney. That's the place, not me. My name's Andy, but really good to be with you. And it's been fantastic just sitting in and listening to some great stories. And I guess the story I'm going to share specifically in a minute or two is really quite a simple one. Sometimes in business, the simple ideas turn out to be the most effective. I think that last one you heard from Novi Sad, and I've been out to Novi Sad myself a couple of times, and I'd love to see that project, because that's a really simple project. And what a great way to get people into the building and create relationships, because that's what we need to do, create relationships. And this little example I'm going to share with you, in part, is where business has created some extraordinary relationships. I guess the journey that my wife and I have been on, we've been very fortunate in terms of my own business. One business I started with 3 or 4 others about 25 years ago, and it's environmental consultancy. I've been able over the years to sort of gradually exit the business, it seems to me there's something about letting go, actually. As I've sort of let go at each stage of the business, it needs to have grown further, and we now employ something like 3,000 people across the globe. And I occasionally come out here to Australia just to help sort of build that business a little bit. Obviously, I haven't been able to come for 2.5 years or more because of COVID, but this is my first visit for a while. But much of my time back home isn't to do with my own business. It's just getting involved in different ways in supporting church and supporting Christians in their work in Bristol, but also overseas. And we've got a big heart because of some family links. One or two members of my wife's family who are involved in mission work from time to time going into Eastern Europe, the former Russian states in particular, places like Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan. And in many of those countries, if you're a church pastor, it's very difficult actually to get work to fund your role as a pastor. You're quite isolated. You may have a relatively small congregation where the level of poverty is very, very high, and the incomes simply aren't enough to necessarily be able to sustain the full-time work of a pastor. So interesting, I thought Sebastian was spot on. I think bivocational involvement in church ministry is a pretty good model, and Paul was a pretty good example of that model, and it can work. So we have had the opportunity to get involved in lots of different projects. Sometimes it may be grant, but I think there's a real biblical principle about being able to invest, to release money, to see it multiplied, to see it build the kingdom, then see that money coming back and being reused. In many ways, I think that's consistent with the parable of the 5 talents. God has given us resources. How can we multiply those? And of course, we can do that by releasing them and seeing the way that God can use people to be able to multiply that and to grow business and to grow the kingdom. So we came across an example where, like this particular one, started off with a request from a couple who were working in Kazakhstan. And often when we're working in places like that, we're seeking to work with people who you can trust. There's something about relationship that creates a context of trust that enables you to be sure that when you put money into something, that you can trust the people who are handing on the ground. Then it's, it's the ability that we may have to be able to release stuff. And if we're lending money into a place like Kazakhstan, we have very little influence. Indeed, I think it's a good principle that we don't. We have to let go and trust that God can use that, and trust the people that are working there to be able to work with locals. So we put a modest amount of money in. It was actually quite a small amount of money. It was about $5,000 because there was a request that a couple of local pastors had wondered whether they could each purchase a very basic vehicle, a car, and operate a couple of days a week as taxi drivers. And that money went in about 5 or 6 years ago. And that's what they did. They each bought a vehicle and they worked part-time as taxi drivers. And if I'm honest, we let that go, and we didn't really get much feedback for a while. But about a year or 18 months ago, we got quite an extraordinary update on that project. And this would be 3 or 4 years after the investment had been made. The investment was made on the basis that with very, very nominal interest, those taxi drivers had been very faithful in repaying that loan. But over that period, we had discovered some amazing things had happened. That actually there were no longer just 2 taxi drivers, but the money had been recycled, it had been reloaned, and there were now 7 taxis. So there were 7 pastors driving around the capital city of Kazakhstan and running their taxis. What was even more remarkable was that, of course, if you run a taxi, you have got a captive audience, that each time a client comes in and sits in your taxi, the taxi driver has the opportunity to start a conversation. And of course, if you're a pastor, you're going to sort of try and have a conversation that might be somewhat intentional and missional. So over this period, each of those taxi drivers had seen and continued to see people who had paid to go into their taxi, have a conversation. A good number of those had been along to church, had come to faith, and were now members of those churches. Now, I think that's a pretty good example where both bivocational ministry really works. We had made that investment on the basis that it was intended primarily to enable an income to be generated to sustain the work of those pastors, to allow them then to work in church and to do their role as church leader. What we didn't anticipate was the fact that they would also be building the kingdom while they were driving their taxi around and meeting people, creating relationship, creating trust, having an influence, and seeing people come to faith. So I think the question you'd asked me, James, was why my wife and I get involved in doing that sort of thing. Sometimes you can put some funding into a project and you can get some very, very amazing surprises. And that was a relatively modest amount of money. But to me, that's a bit of a no-brainer. It's a very simple model, isn't it? And you could say, well, gosh, you could take that and you could replicate that in all sorts of different places. So I agree with Sebastian. There are times when you need to build big, and you need to be, shaping something that is appropriately structured and invested in. This is a case where the multiplication it's almost one by one. It's not one big business, but it's a series of little micro businesses that is having an extraordinary result, both financially, but also in seeing people come to faith. James, I hope that was helpful just to give a little example, if you will.
Thank you, Andy. No, thank you very much. And folks, if you've got questions, do put them in the chat. I've got a few questions I'm going to just ask as we come towards the end of this time together. But Andy, appreciate that. And again, appreciate the uniqueness of that story. Again, perhaps something in what Andy shared resonates with you because, that's something that may be doable. And it may not be as a taxi driver, but it may be in some other context. So yes, if you've got questions, do put them in. But I'm going to just come to you, Sasha, first, and just ask you a question about what would you say has been the most important ingredient in motivating people around you to get involved? Because I remember when we talked, I know other people are involved in this as well, but how have you motivated others?
If I understand you good, how I motivate others to work also
yeah,
to have the business?
Yeah.
Yes. I can say that in Roma community here in Serbia and people that where I work with, I don't know in other countries, but they have good. They have some amount of the money from the government, like social help, children money, and yeah, working on local deponie, collect metal, copper, etc. things. But new generation. If I look now between new generation, what is coming now, the children and the youth don't want to live lazy as parents do and grandparents. They want to have a work. They want to move from the house. They want to have better life. They want the children of them go to the school. They want the children of them finish the high school. So one of the things is if I start to simply explain, if I start business with flowers, I can show some people how I do that. They get inspiration. So one of my friends, he say, "Oh, I am not good with flowers, but I know good to build." So he start to build, to paint the houses, do isolation, and then he find a way. Oh, people don't want to pay to me. I have a problem. I must register my firm. Then officially I can get money with not so much troubles. So he registered a company because he was motivated. It's better to work. He's from younger generation. And what he has done, he took all our youth from the church and they work for him. So that is one of his example. Other example is, let's say if I look 10 years back, Romas have a house, not so good houses in good, bad roof, bad walls, bad, everything was bad. But if they saw that you are working and that you have something, you must be motivator, like engine who is moving and showing and be always example. Then one man came and he was working in our business. He renovated his house. It was little house, but he renovated. And then others say, how you renovate? Oh, I was to work. It's not enough money what I get from the government, so I was to work. And if I look again, this is also very interesting, like years and years, if we look back, we have today the Romas who have regular work in the companies. They get loan from credit, they buy the houses, they are still working, they still pay back the rent, to the bank. And it's amazing. You must be somebody who is just to always talk, always be engine and motivator, talk and talk and talk. Of course, there will be people who is always lazy, you cannot change them. But I believe that new generation is the key in our ministry here, what we saw.
Thank you, Sasha. That's great. Thank you for that. Nesha, I don't know whether you're there, but if you are, great. Excellent. Nesha, I was going to ask you, what do you think is the most important step, what's the most important thing in taking that step of faith? You have this idea, but, what was the trigger, if you like, that finally pushed you to take that first step? You're on mute, Nesha, just to say. Oh, still on mute, Nesha.
Okay.
So.
I'm sorry. Yeah, my bad. Yeah, well, as I said at the beginning of my talk, I'm a spiritual entrepreneur. That's my gifting. So entrepreneurs are naturally courageous to make a step forward. So it has to be much with your giftings, but I think primarily is as Christians, as Christian leaders, we know God and God knows us. And if God was faithful in the past, He's going to be faithful in the future. That was my core belief at that time. So I experienced God working in my life when I was a missionary in Banja Luka 2 years after the terrible war stopped in Bosnia, with almost, nothing, with just a little or no resources. We planted a church there from scratch. God was faithful. I saw miracles in my life when it comes to finances, when it comes to stuff and resources. So, if God was faithful then, why wouldn't He be faithful in the future? I was confident. I mean, confidence is very important, although, there is always, as an entrepreneur, you always take a risk. But you just go step by step. You risk, you trust God, you pray, you talk to your friends, you have your mentors, you call them, you have Zoom calls with them, you gather up all information, and you start where you are. I think you mentioned that, James, just 5 minutes ago, that we must start where we are and use what we have. So we cannot play with cards that have not been dealt to us, and we have to modify our strategies to fit into our realities. So and there are plenty of examples in the Bible. Like look at Samson, for instance. How he beat all those Philistines. Killed thousands and 10,000s. He found was it a donkey's? How do you say it in English? The donkey's bone or donkey's.
Yeah. Ox goad, I think.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the word. And he killed them all. He didn't have a sword. He didn't have a gun. He didn't have a whatever they use now in this terrible war. He found something around him and he used it, and he won. So I believe all of us, we just look around, look the people around us. They're probably not the best the people with the best ever skills or the best education, but we start from where we are, and we start building step by step, brick by brick.
Thank you.
That's important.
No, thank you, Nesha. This is a question to any of you, actually, who feels happy to answer this. Do any of the speakers find that potential customers won't come to their business because it's linked with an evangelical church? Sasha, you're nodding. Do you want to say something? And then Artur?
Yes, I have this. Of course, I call them extremely orthodox, or just people who don't have, they don't like even any Protestant believers or churches or something like that. I have big experience. Few of them try to stop our business, but because, again, I say because of our social project, what is open and media follow, and also, of course, we are supporting part of the local government here. They tried, but they was not success. It's not easy. That is normal. That's happened. But patience, love, special love. If you show more love, God's love, to this kind of people, I know it's not easy. One time that can broke the walls. Wife of Orthodox priest, she make house that a woman stopped buy flowers from us. We was not say anything about that. We continue to sell. But other wife of a Greek Catholic priest, she show example and came in the center where we sell, middle of the day where most people are working, and she start to buy. So she say, I'm thankful that your church is helping poor ones. I want to buy flowers from you. Somewhere we make picture and put this on internet. We ask, can we do that? Yes. So this was broke the walls. Always you will have somebody who will, react like this. But please, that not be that this can stop you. Go on with your work.
Thank you, Sasha. Artur, did you want to say anything about that?
I would agree. I think we also face situation when people would boycott or would not like to buy, maybe a small number, but still they want to show their hate towards Christians by not attending a shop like that. I think in this part of the world, particularly if a church runs a business, you're into the focus of the authorities more. So we see that the tax administration and authorities like to spot particularly church community because they want to make sure that or to catch us somehow, so we are extra on the loop of the authorities. So yeah, there are some danger or issues like that.
Thank you, Artur. That's absolutely. So that's one of the real challenges. So we've got another question, and again, I'll open it up. So you up for answering this? How do you organize church ministry and business in church, and not have a problem with maybe misunderstanding from people outside the church? Is that a danger? Can you create misunderstanding, of people, looking on? Is it like anybody up for giving this question a go? I don't know. I mean, Nesha, you're in a community. Do people misunderstand what the church is about because you run a business?
Most, if I heard some complaints, that was people in the church. I mean, not particularly in our church, Mexican church, because I was able to communicate it well, and we have a different mindset that's probably some other traditional evangelical conservative churches, and I don't mean anything negative about it, but probably people from other churches, but that's understandable because they were not at our, they do not know, they do not understand our mindset, our identity. They did not listen to our visions and our strategies and what motives are behind to plant the church. As soon as I would explain to someone who was against it and had some questions, they were willing even to join, and they were motivated to do it by themselves, because there are so many, there are biblical principles for starting a business. Well, I mean, there are 1,500 verses in the Bible that talk about that speak about money and material stuff, and much less about faith, much less about love, much less about some other things. So because the money is in a way, it is a test. So how we treat money and material stuff, it's basically our tests who we are when it comes to our faith and our relationship with God. But it has to be theology and philosophy and ideology behind all of this. But I understand the question. That was also my fear. So, and there is a tension and controversy, you know, being a pastor and having a church building and then running a business in the church. But I think it needs a longer conversation for someone to get from that point, hey, this is a church building, and here we just pray and sing and worship God, have prayer meetings. I mean, biblically, we all know what's the church. Church is us, the body of Christ, and this is a building. This is a building where we gather as a church. So, yeah, definitely we have to bring people on board with us. You cannot just do it on ourselves. We have to have people that not just understand the vision, but also are ready to participate and even to be excited. And as a leader, as a pastors, we need to lead people from point A to point B. I mean, in the process, I had some people that were so completely negative toward the idea, and now they are our big fans, biggest fans. And I see how they share our posts on Facebook, how they bring other people to our business, and that's all part of that.
Yeah, no, Nestor, thank you. So I think you're right. Yeah, take people with you, listen to their concerns. There may be genuine concerns and questions and misunderstandings, but dialogue with them, I think, is really, really important. We're gonna finish, but before we do, one final question to Sebastian. Sebastian, if somebody here today is thinking about, doing something off the back of this, they're thinking, well, what do I do now? What do you think, if somebody's thinking like that, should be their next step? And do you want to say anything as well about the mission of teaching business stuff that I know I had an email about it the other day. So those are my two final questions to you.
Well, obviously the first question is start praying and seek God's face as to what he will have you do in your particular context. My second advice, and I think all the speakers mentioned this, choose to see every single challenge as an opportunity. And I honestly believe on that. And, just read Deuteronomy chapter 8, when God, chapter 3, when God tells the Israelites that he carried them through the wilderness to test their hearts, to prove to them, to test them. So every once in a while, we will have trials, and those trials are supposed to strengthen us. Number 3, find a group of people around you, people who will pray for you, people who will advise you, people who will invest in you. Meet with them periodically, maybe once a week, maybe once a month. Number 4, write a business plan. Very often we have these ideas, we have these conversations, and they're just wishes. My recommendation is write a business plan and always start with an Excel. Don't start with a story, don't start with the vision, don't start with the need. Start with the Excel and then build on that. I tell the students that's the first piece that you have to write in a business plan. And then circulate that business plan around. And I want to leave everybody with 1 Corinthians 3:6, where Paul says, Apollos waters, I'm the one, Apollo planted, I'm the one who watered, God makes it grow. I really believe in this humanly divine partnership where we have a distinct responsibility to plant and to water, but we're not necessarily responsible for the growth. Sometimes God doesn't give growth, but that's his prerogative. Sometimes he gives different kind of growth, the thing that we can't even imagine. He brings partners, he brings opportunities, he brings all kinds of, that's God's providence. And I think that's the fundamental difference between a Christian business person and a secular business person. Secular people think they're also responsible for the growth. And when things go haywire, they engage in acts of corruption, they give bribes, and they do all kinds of things like that. We as Christians, we have that detachment where we know we fulfilled what God called us to do. We were faithful in the planting, we were faithful in the watering. God's the one that's changing people's hearts. God's the one that's solving the problems. God's the one that's transforming communities. Make sure that you realize that it's all up to him. He will get all the glory. And that should give you a lot of peace of mind. That should give you a lot of detachment where you say, hey, I'm just going to be faithful and planting and watering, and it's going to be up to God. And I'm here to attest, God will positively surprise you. Not the way you want him to, but he will positively surprise you, and he will be faithful in bringing the right fruit at the right time for his glory.
Thank you, Sebastian. And the mission of teaching business, do you just want to say briefly what this online program is?
So we are in the process of doing online courses where we are equipping people. Obviously, we're subjective, so I think everybody should be a teacher, and I think that the human mandate is Jesus's calling, or the Great Commission, to go teach and make disciples, and that's the purpose of it. So if anybody is interested, we are currently selling this. This is one of the ways that we're supporting ourselves. This is one of the ways that we're having our social enterprises where our lessons are being made available to the public, but we have scholarships. So if there's any of the callers here, please contact me on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and we'll make that available to you. Basically what it is, it's the biblical basis for education, engaging in education, whether it is formal, so you enter into a high school, you enter into a university, or informal, whether you set up a little educational training place, a trade school, or things like that. So it really gives you the broad overview as to how to go about it in a general context. So contact me, and we'd love to connect with you and help you do this.
Thank you, Sebastian. Thank you to all our speakers. I'm going to pray, and then we'll wrap this up. Father God, I thank you for this morning. Lord, I thank you for all that's been shared. For the ideas, for the way that your Holy Spirit has been at work through these great enterprises that are so different, and yet all of you, used by you to grow ministry, to grow your work in different countries around the Balkans and Eastern Europe. And we just praise you for that. Lord, I pray for each person who's been here today, Lord, that as they go away and hopefully think on this, that you would inspire them as to what their next step might be, if you have plans and purposes for the use of business as part of sustaining their ministry work. Lord, thank you that you've been with us. Thank you for this time. In Jesus' name, amen.